birthday today, so
Oh, that's right.
we are now live on YouTube.
Yes, we should take 30 seconds to process and we should
Hello
be live.
world. Okay. Are people watching us? Do we know?
I could let you know I'm refreshing the page.
Just us talking to each other, that's it.
Scintillating.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me confirm viewer chat. Yeah, everyone's here.
Oh, nice.
Okay, we are not live. So 1 second.
Assalamualaikum.
Hey, assalamualaikum, Habiba.
Waalaikumsalam. I'm just trying to get the live going. Okay, okay, we are live.
Great.
Hey. Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody. We are officially live on the NUI alum account. Welcome all to the Media Communications and Journalism panel. Here we have 4 of our wonderful alum. Inshallah, our 4th NUI alum will be joining us at 6 p.m. But thank you guys, thanks to all the audience for being here today, for giving your eyes and ears to our wonderful stars, and for being interested in learning a little bit more about media communication, journalism, and the whole shebang of the media field. Obviously a very, very growing field. My name is Noor Yusri. I graduated from NUI in 2019, and I serve as the chair of the Freshman Development Committee. Today, I'll be moderating this panel, but of course, I open the floor completely to the panelists to share their experiences, advice for students on the call, as well as any other information that they'd like to share with the NUI and ICG community, inshallah. And now I'd like to just introduce all the panelists. So for here, we have 3 of our panelists. We have Habiba Hussain, Safa Khan, and Sara Qari. And joining us at 6 p.m., Reem Nasr will join us as well. So I'd like to open the floor to you guys, pass on the mic in any order that you guys choose. Feel free to introduce yourselves, a little bit about when you graduated from NUI and general information, but don't get into the specifics. We'll leave those surprises for later. But yeah, go ahead.
I defer to our, if we go in order of seniority, I defer to Habiba if you want to go first, but I'm happy to go otherwise.
Sure, I can go first. Okay, assalamualaikum everybody. My name is Habiba Hussain. I graduated from Nur Liman School in 2010. I attended there from 7th through 12th grade. And I really enjoyed my experience there, alhamdulillah. I actually worked there as well for like a year and a half post-graduation. And I went to Rutgers University. I majored there in journalism and media studies, as well as religion. I did a double major there. And then I minored in digital communication, information, and media. When I guess I don't know, Noor said not to go into too much detail. So basically after that, I interned, or during my college time, actually, I interned at a basketball magazine called Slam. It was like a dream opportunity for me, alhamdulillah. It was actually virtual before the world went virtual, but it still gave me, I think, a lot of experience and connection. And I did get to go into their New York City office a few times, so that was cool. But other than that, from then on, like, alhamdulillah, I got married. I moved out of state. Now I'm back in state, actually, in New Jersey, but I'm taking some time off from like a full-time or even a part-time role right now. I have two boys, alhamdulillah, little boys, so they kind of take up my time for now. But I do some freelance work and stuff on the side, especially for some Muslim publications like Why Islam and ISNA, as well as helping manage a few small Muslim businesses like Bulu Gear and Kamani, which sells men's dobes. So alhamdulillah, I stay busy, and definitely I would say that my experience or background in journalism and media and writing has really helped me with those like business ventures that I'm a part of now. So I guess, Sarah, I'll take it to you.
Cool. Thanks, Aviva. It's awesome to hear about what you've been up to. And I love how casually you're like, oh, yeah, I'm just like, doing all this stuff on the side while I have 2 kids. That's amazing. So I graduated Nur Liman in 2012, 2 years after Habiba. I then went to Princeton University. I studied anthropology as my major after, we can talk about this later, after dabbling in pre-med for a while, as one does. And I graduated from Princeton in 2016, after which I have been working at New York Public Radio pretty much since I graduated. I'm a producer at this podcast called Radiolab, and it's about a lot of different things. I think we talk about it as a show that's about curiosity. Sometimes it's about science. Sometimes it's about politics. I really like doing stories about the courts and the law, like the Supreme Court, and like have done some democracy related stories. It's like the kind of thing that I really like, taking wonky legal things and trying to make them understandable to regular people, and explain why they matter. And yeah, I can talk about other shows that I've worked on later, but for now I'll hand it over to Sefa.
Thanks, Sarah. This NUI alumni thing is amazing. That's been set up after I graduated, because in college, I remember it was people like Sarah and Habiba and Reem who'll be joining us, who I used to stalk relentlessly on like LinkedIn and Instagram to see what they were up to, so I could learn more about this like media communication space. So this is amazing. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Safa. I graduated from Nur Liman in 2014, so 2 years after Sarah, and I went to Rutgers University. I was part of the business school and the School of Communication and Information, where I double majored in marketing and journalism and media studies. And when I was graduating, they had concentrations available for the journalism program. So mine was creative media practice, which was less about the content creation of media and more about how do we reach an audience and how do we promote all this content. So it was more about the media management and strategy side. So after college, I went on to work at Accenture, where I was a consulting analyst and eventually a consultant focused in the AI and customer experience space, kind of separated and distanced a bit from the media world. And I missed it a lot. So I joined the World Economic Forum this past summer, where I now do project design and communication and media outreach for our tech policy space. So I get to do a lot of project design for specifically artificial intelligence, and then I get to work with 1,000,001 different media companies to create content around this really growing, cool tech space. That's me.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences, or rather a summary of your synopsis of your professional experiences. But guys, thank you so much. Yes, so we're just gonna travel back in time, back to the good old NUI high school days. Talk just a little bit about what was going through your mind then, what were you interested in, and what types of experiences you were seeking out, I guess extracurriculars, what types of classes you might have enjoyed as a NUI high school student. But yeah, we'll start off with that in any order that you guys choose.
I guess I'll go first. I guess keeping it in that order might just be helpful. So when I was at NUI, this was like before the school building. I think we had the groundbreaking ceremony in like the June of my senior year. So I graduated from like the old ICJ Masjid, had classes in like the modular units and stuff. So it's been quite a while, alhamdulillah, but it was a great experience anyway. When I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into education and teaching. Sorry. But after I got to Rutgers, it was like there were so many opportunities. It was so big, and I kind of realized like I need to explore a little bit. So I took a few different types of like intro level, like 101, 102 classes. And when I got to I don't know what it was called anymore. It was like probably intro to media studies or something like that. And it was like a 300 or 400 student class. And I found it really interesting. And then, I did do like the newspaper in high school, the Oculus, and I don't know where that's at now, but alhamdulillah, that kind of let me sort of I don't even know if I would say it would introduce me, because the process was really different than I think how a real paper works. But just in terms of practice writing on the side about something that you like, it definitely gave me that opportunity. So if you're I think last time I checked, it looked a little bit more like a newspaper, and I don't know where it is now, if it's still out there, but that would be one place to start. And if it's not there anymore, you could definitely start it up again. I think people are more into news now than they used to be, because I think it's just a little bit more accessible. So that's there. And honestly, if something doesn't exist, you can totally like start something, I would say. I think that's a great way to kind of share your passion with the rest of the community, and you might be surprised to see that other people share in it as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned Oculus. It's definitely still running at NUI, and after my graduation, it's transitioned to an online forum, which has become even more accessible to students in the NUI community. So hosting their own Oculus website and obviously updating the articles and the jazz and all the juice with the news. So yeah.
That's awesome. I can go. I also did Oculus in high school and maybe middle school. I don't even remember. But yeah, I was on the Oculus, I think like all 4 years. It's funny because like I think that all of my extracurricular interests in high school were like pretty liberal artsy. Like I was crazy about mock trial, did that all 4 years. I did all the Model UN conferences, I did Oculus, and like the whole time I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna be a doctor. Just because and I distinctly remember doing Rutgers Model Congress and getting kind of a taste of like what it could potentially be like in just a really simple way to like be a journalist and be doing that, because instead of being assigned like a state, I was assigned like, oh, go be a reporter, like you're representing Al Jazeera and like your job is to like report on the conference. And so all I did like the whole weekend, I think it was in like the Hyatt in New Brunswick, was like go to all of the different conference rooms where people were having sessions and being like, what are you guys doing, like tell me. And then people would like tell me things off the record and I would like print them, and it was like, or not off the record, but the people would tell me things like anonymously and I would print them, and it was like super thrilling. And I think I got like my first taste of like reporting, and I think that was like completely intoxicating. That being said, I didn't really like think that meant anything for my career, because I think, like a lot of people, I grew up wanting to have a career that had a pretty set path, and journalism certainly wasn't one of those things. Like I didn't even know what step one was to get there. And so, the things I was going for were much more charted out. And so for a long time, I don't think it was until my senior year of college actually that I was like, oh, I actually do want to do this for a career. And that was after taking like a couple of journalism classes and, listening to a lot of podcasts myself and being like, oh, this is really cool, talking to professors. But yeah, it certainly didn't happen in high school. One thing that I'll share that happened in high school was this playwright named Wajahat Ali came to talk. And I know now he like writes a lot of opinion columns for the New York Times, and I think has like a book out or something. Anyway, at the time he was like a playwright, and Miss Sophia would like bring in all these people to like come and talk to the high school, and he was like the one person that was doing something like remotely liberal artsy. And I just remember sitting in the multipurpose room that day and just completely like enthralled with like everything that he said. And he was basically just like pitching to us that like we didn't have to do the very like set career paths that our parents wanted for us, and told us a little bit about his work and what it was like to write a play. And I just remember sitting there being like, oh my god, I have like 1,000 questions for him. And I guess that story is just like, and the Model Congress story is just a way of saying like, I think in high school it's really important to pay attention to those moments, like the ones where you like really feel alive, in the midst of, you know, learning all this stuff that you could kind of go either way on. And again, at the time I didn't know that those moments meant anything, but I think looking back I was able to connect the dots to be like, oh, this is the thing that I've always enjoyed.
Yeah, I think that last bit that you touched on, Sarah, is really, really important, because I was trying to find that one moment in high school where I was like, yes, I knew I was going to work in media. This is the moment where I fell in love with it, but I can't find one of those moments. It's more, I think if I think back to my high school, I was the person that did try everything. And I think that's really important when you're so young. It's really dabble in everything that even remotely interests you, because you never know what might click. So when I think back to high school, I was also part of Oculus. I tried Model UN. I was in soccer. And then, you know, Sarah talking about Wajahat Ali reminds me that we actually went to go see Reza Aslan once in Princeton, I think when I was a senior in high school, which is really interesting because I think that was the time when social media was really kicking off and people were able to write their own news in the form of, you know, tweets or Facebook posts, things like that. And especially being a Muslim in America was becoming a really, really hot topic. And I think the generation that I'm part of, that we're part of, it's a really important way for us to get involved in speaking about our experiences. And I really jumped on that bandwagon, I think, senior year of high school, and was able to take that, what I learned from what Reza Aslan was doing and what all these other, you know, great Muslim Americans were doing, and just learning from all my experiences in NUI, being surrounded by such incredible Muslim women, especially in our faculty. I think that was the key thing that sticks out to me from high school.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And yeah, it definitely leads to all your experiences at NUI, the idea of, as a high school student, more often times than not, just, you know, the average high school student trying to figure out what they'd like to study in the future. And there are a lot of extracurricular activities, mashallah, at their disposal at NUI, and a growing cohort of, you know, clubs and organizations that they can join and get involved in. But the idea that you don't necessarily have to dabble in things that you think will directly contribute to your career or your career development. I think if all of us were to look back at our NUI experiences and pinpoint specific clubs or organizations that may or may not be interconnected to what we're currently studying and or what we're currently doing as a career, but they have somehow contributed to, you know, our path, this weird, you know, path journey, figuring out what we actually do enjoy. And what would like, you know, formalizing our passions into careers. So yeah, those are very good points. And, you know, in general, I mean, we can't we can't deny the idea that, you know, the fields of media and communication journalism are constantly evolving. I mean, we talk about every field in career development constantly evolving, because, you know, just generally changing technology and new theories and discoveries, things of that sort. But the way we communicate sometimes is, I mean, it's inevitably serves as the core for every other field. Transmission of information, especially about being a Muslim in America, is the epitome of I think what the Islamic community should be, you know, focused on, in terms of like outreach to other communities of that sort. But yeah, thank you guys so much for that insight on your experiences at NUI. But yeah, in terms of, you know, transitioning to being a high school senior, trying to solidify your next step as one does. What was going through your mind in terms of college applications? You know, the whole package, SAT, ACT, general stress. Trying to figure out how you can not only confirm the next step, but, you know, making sure that you're happy, you're fulfilling your family's expectations, the community's expectations. How was that all for you guys?
I think that first of all, there's like a lot of pressure as like a 17 going on 18-year-old to try to have it all figured out. I think I think it's just kind of silly, to be honest, now, like looking back, because I'm like more than 10 years removed from that time. I don't think it's an appropriate ask for somebody that young, especially coming from a small school in a very sheltered kind of community. I think, like I said, for me, I thought I wanted to do one thing, and I guess like Sarah, you said the same thing. Like you thought you wanted to do one thing, and then you go and you like realize that there's this whole other world of potential opportunity. So I think the best way to like handle that stress is definitely to make a lot of dua and like pray istikhara and like seek out people that have done different things and ask them if, like, you know, ask them a lot of questions. Like if you're already like watching this is like step one. It's like, okay, this is something I was kind of interested in, don't know much about. Let me see. Is there something there for me that interests me at all? And I think the more like research that you do, or the more exploration that you do earlier on, can really help you sort of at least narrow down what you want to do. For me, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't like going down the science and math route. So I had that part figured out. And then once I kind of like dabbled in different things like writing workshops and stuff like that, it became a lot easier, alhamdulillah. But I would say to talk to people and do your research as you can, like, and in terms of SATs and so I'll be honest, I only applied to Rutgers and that was it. My parents were like not that open to me going far away. Alhamdulillah, I really enjoyed my time there too. So I'm sorry about the background noise, but you know, it worked out for me. But like if I could give advice to other people, I would definitely say to like broaden your horizon in that route. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So, but yeah, that's kind of my intake on that.
Yeah, that's all really helpful and wise. And I think what I'd add to that is, you know, to Habiba's point about like the fact that when you're applying to college, you're like 17 or 18. I think that's really important. And I think that, you know, I didn't really figure out what I was up to until like 8 years after that, or no, well, let's say 5 years after that. Like my first year after college was like the one where I was like, okay, I'm trying out this career in media. I'm like, you know, I've done an internship. I'm trying to like work freelance. It's, you know, that's sort of the time when I was really figuring out like what I wanted to do with my life. And so to think back, like to expect that I would have known that at 17, like I didn't even know what jobs there were when I was 17. You know what I mean? Like I think if somebody asked me like what are the jobs that you can have, like I'd probably say like 15 things, like it's, or like less. I don't know. I just didn't know what you could even be in the world. So I think I think knowing that like you don't know what's out there is a big part of it, and that you're, as you go along, as you open doors, you'll see what other doors there are. Like you don't, right now you might have like 3 doors in front of you, but what you'll learn is like when you open and close all of those doors, like there's like 4 more after each one of those. So that's really how it's been for me. I think even today, like every so often I learn about a new job that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing that you could do. Like somebody's like fully doing that with their lives. Like I think that's especially true in media. Hey Reem, how's it going? Alaikum.
Hey, Alaikum salam. Sorry I'm late, guys. Just joining.
Oh
Please
no,
continue.
you're all good. You're all good. So yeah, I was just saying like routinely I have the experience of being like, wow, I didn't even know that was a job that you could have in media, especially insofar as like film and TV and like, you know, doing research. Like I just learned like there are people whose entire job it is to like do like archival research, find like old audio and video for like TV shows. Like that's their whole job. I didn't know. So anyway, that's all to say like, yeah, I think process of elimination has been like really important for me. Like I thought again that I was going to be a doctor, and then fully tried that for like almost 2 years in college, and was like, this is horrible. Like I'm bad at this and I feel terrible. And then I was like, okay, like I came across anthropology in my freshman year of college, and I just had this feeling of like, I just think this is the most interesting thing in the world. I don't know why. I just think it's cool. And so I decided to major in that. And then I was like, but I don't want to be an anthropologist. Like I don't know, maybe I should like work in marketing. And so then I did some marketing internships, and then I was like, I don't like that either. And then finally I was like, oh, like I kind of think podcasts are cool. Like maybe I'll apply to public radio, and then that has worked out. And I've really enjoyed it. But I think if I hadn't tried all the other things that I've tried, I wouldn't have been able to like have as much certainty when I found the thing that I loved. So yeah, I would just say like try everything and then pay attention to how it makes you feel.
I'd say Sarah and Habiba pretty much covered it. And I think it's funny that Habiba says she only applied to Rutgers. And I applied to several universities. I got into a couple liberal arts colleges. And the reason that I chose not to go to those colleges is because I felt like they didn't have enough options for me there. Because I genuinely had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of school. I applied to the Rutgers Business School because I was like, I don't like engineering. I don't like the med field. I might as well try to build a foundation in something that's completely different. And it happened to work out. But I think being in a college like Rutgers that had 1,000,001 options for me to choose from was really, really helpful. And so like Sarah and Habib already touched on, like you're going into college as literally a baby. You don't know anything about the world yet. And so that's really your time to go explore, try different things, and just really learn about who you are and what drives you and is your passion.
Noor, do you want to yeah, do you want to repeat the question for Reem maybe?
Yes, please. That would be great, actually. Are you guys just talking about like from high school onwards, like how you got into journalism?
Yeah, so specifically like your transition from like NUI to college, what was going through your mind during the application process? Whether you knew about media then and jobs in the media field or otherwise.
So I don't know if everybody else is coming from the same background, but I knew I wanted to do journalism from when I was in the 7th grade. This was like I'm a very one-minded, one-track kind of person. So 9/11 happened when I was in 7th grade. I was at Nur Liman and I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do. I was always attracted to like language and writing, and I was never into math or science anyway. So I would have eventually ended up doing something like this if that hadn't happened. But I was just like, that's it. And I never entertained a single other idea since like from that point onwards. My dad tried to talk me out of it. He's like, you won't make money in this field. What are you doing? And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And I love it. And I did a series of internships in high school, a series of internships in college. I applied directly to journalism schools and programs that I knew were strong in journalism. I went to NYU, and I think, yeah, at that time, if you were a journalism major, you also had to double major in something else. So I chose Middle Eastern Studies because I know they had a really good program there too. So I did that. I think during college, I interned at Al Jazeera one summer at their UN office, and I did CBS one semester. So I did a bunch of internships. I tried to get as much experience as I possibly could. And this is a very boring story because it was like what I expected it to be was what it was. And I loved it the whole time. And I was like, I don't want to change my mind. This is crazy. I'm a very boring person. And then I graduated from NYU in 2011. So the job market was like just obliterated. It was horrible. So I kept looking for jobs and I couldn't find anything in journalism that I thought was going to work for me. And I decided to go back to grad school. I was like, okay, I did mostly print at NYU, and I was like, let me focus on getting some digital skills, some video, some TV, some radio. I fell in love with radio. I did a lot of radio stuff at that time. So I went to the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. I graduated in 2014. And then so before then I was like, I like reporting like international types of stories and stuff. And then right before I started the program, somebody was like, you should look into business news because that's where all the money is. And I was like, okay. Coming out of like a failed attempt to find a job, I was like, this is probably a good idea. So that's what I did. I studied at CUNY. I did the business track, journalism track. So there was like 4 tracks. I think it was city reporting, international business, something else, arts, I think arts and entertainment was one. I did business, graduated, started at CNBC the next week. Like I graduated on a Friday and I started the next Monday at CNBC as a news associate on the breaking news desk. And that was, I did that for a whole year. That was a really, really good experience. It was really interesting. I'm not a breaking news type of person, but I learned a lot. And it was like a really good first experience in the working world. And then I only did that for a year because when I moved to Egypt, I got married and I had Zaina, and like there was this whole, I had this whole big gap in my CV. And then I came back, and then I was like, I have built a lot of good relationships at CNBC. So let me reach out to them and see like if I can, I don't know, get back in somehow. And they were like, yeah, of course. Like we had you here in 2015. Please come back again. So I'm back. I'm just in a different role. I'm doing social media now. So sorry if I went off track and like gave you my whole life story. I didn't know like where we are in the span of this thing. So yes, I will stop talking now.
Are you kidding? That's like everything I wanted to hear. So
Same, I second that.
yeah, I'll just jump in and say, Reem, I remember that about you. Like I remember you were one of those people that was like journal. It was like you and like Alina Zuffer, you know, it was like journalism people. And I was like, I so envied the heck out of you guys because you like knew what you wanted to do, you know, and I was like so not that. So it's anyway, it's awesome to hear, and it's like awesome to hear that you're at CNBC. It's super cool. But that is to say, like, I think what Safa said earlier about like connecting with people, or was it Habiba? I don't remember. Connecting with people who are like doing the thing that you want to do and just like asking them. I think like, you know, Reem, I'm sure you can attest to this. Like when we were entering the world after high school, there were certainly fewer people that we could have done that with. But I think now compared to then, I think there are a lot more people, even just amongst the NUI alumni. I think like when I graduated, there were like 20 NUI alumni, like there weren't that many people. So yeah, I think like building those connections is super important. And for me in college, like I went to college with this girl named Rand Abdel Fattah, who's like another like Islamic school graduate from Jersey, and like really connected with her. And she did anthropology, and I was like, maybe I should look into anthropology. And then she went into public radio, and I was like, maybe I should look into public radio. Like just like doing like following her and like being curious about what she was up to was like hugely influential in my career choices. And then responding to another piece of what you asked, Noor, in terms of like dealing with people's expectations, I think the two things I would say is like the community expectations certainly feel overwhelming when you're graduating, because everyone's like, go represent the Muslim community, like, you know, you are the face of Islam in the world, like, and you're like, okay, like I'm gonna do it. It's a lot of pressure, and I think it's important to keep in mind that like you are just one person, and that like you don't have to carry the entire burden of the entire like Muslim global community on your back. And that, you know, as much as it's great to like end up, you know, in a field where you're representing Muslims, like I think that if you start out with that pressure, it's actually really hard to get there. So setting the community expectations to the side to focus on yourself for a little while is really important. I think the expectations that I collided with more were my parents' expectations. I think they were extremely confused about why I wanted to study anthropology and like what I thought I was even doing. Like for years, this was like a contentious conversation in my household. And I think, you know, I mean, credit to my parents to like, you know, look past their bewilderment and like give me some time to like figure out what I was doing. But I think for me also, like when other people reminded me of the fact that, you know, my parents love me and they want to see me succeed. And like, if they see me doing something that I love, that it, you know, that they'll come around. It certainly wasn't easy, but I think that that's sort of the advice I give people now is like, you know, throw yourself into the thing that you want to do and like make a case to your parents and your family that like that's something you can thrive in. And I think that certainly the specter of like the starving artist was like a big part of my consciousness in high school, that like I just thought like if you aren't one of like three different super stable careers, like you're gonna be poor. And I it's just been pleasantly surprising to see how wrong I was about that. Like there are tons of careers in media that like pay really well and like, you know, can support a full life. And I think that, you know, that was certainly one of the fears that my parents had. And I think, you know, as they've seen that that's not true, I think they also started to relax a little bit. Sorry, I went on a little bit there, but hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those experiences, and to you all for sharing your experiences. Because the transition is definitely something to grapple with. It's, you know, from coming from a small graduating class, and I mean the graduating classes have been getting bigger, obviously, but it's still a transition no matter where you move on to or what you do. Not just the idea of like so many more people being around you and being in just this huge community of people that you don't know, doing so many things that you might have not been aware of previously. But also the idea that like, just, you know, genuine idea of exposure. There's so much out there. College gives you the opportunity to take courses in things that you would have never even thought existed, take courses in things that are so interdisciplinary, you know, and courses that may not necessarily be tied to your interested field of discipline or like, I guess, hopeful career for the future. But for some odd reason, in unexplainable words, like drop up your attention. So it's absolutely mind-boggling. I can't actually put it into words. Somebody would have to experience that to understand, but it's literally your world's your oyster. And I know different colleges offer different atmospheres, and some may offer more room for exploration than others, depending on what types of programs that you're in and how quote unquote strict they are, because there's a growing number of like, I guess you could say, assurance programs in all these sorts of fields that are designed for you to put your head down and delve deeply into that specific career. But there's also a beauty in not knowing exactly what you want to do, and or exploring things that you would have otherwise not known you were interested in. So thank you guys for alluding to that, because that's a huge part of the transition from NUI to college. Not necessarily because there's not an opportunity to explore those things earlier on, but because life and you're coming out of the NUI bubble, and you're just searching for a place to ground yourself and grow, of course. So thank you for sharing those experiences. But I guess a very smooth transition into like actual college life, specifically in the lens of like academics and courses that you were taking. How much leverage did you guys have in choosing to take courses that you wanted to take? And there I guess the whole journey between toggling courses that you were required to take versus courses that you weren't necessarily required to take that might have changed your world.
Why don't we continue with the seniority trend, and then I'll give it to Reem first because she's senior than I am.
This is so embarrassing. I graduated from NYU in 2011, you guys. This is like, I'm trying to remember, I'm a dinosaur, but I remember the first 2 years was a lot of like required courses that I had to take. I believe for the Middle Eastern Studies major, we had to choose a language, and then I needed to do, I don't know if it was required or not, but I remember that I ended up doing Arabic throughout the 4 years, and then I did Spanish for the first 2 years, and then I had a lot of other required courses. But towards the last 2 years, it was a lot of just like me choosing whatever I wanted. And because I didn't just do journalism, I did a Middle Eastern Studies, it was like this amazing offering of courses on like so many cool topics and like language and religion. And it was just like, it was great. I know people are like, oh, but Middle Eastern Studies, like, what do you learn? And like, how do you apply that in the real world when you're trying to look for a job and stuff? Obviously now it's a totally different landscape than when I was in college. Like now I feel like for young people, really, if you want to do something, you can figure out a way to do it and like make money from it. It's crazy. Like the internet like has just blossomed in such a way that you can actually make, if you want to be an artist, you can do that and you can make it a lucrative like career. You can do so many different things. And that was 100% not the case back in 2011, like especially in journalism, because it it was that really, really awkward transition phase between print and online. So like the online thing was not moving fast enough, basically. So it was like when I was at CNBC, like the website, they were like, okay, like how many stories are we gonna write today? It was like a very belabored endeavor, and everybody was so just like, what's going on? And like now that I'm back in the field after all these years, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Now you can actually make the case to your parents that you want to be a journalist, and you know you'll be able to like support yourself. That was 100% not the case before. But I feel like in college, it's like your time to explore and take all those cool classes that you like, those just like purely academic classes where you're just going to learn about something super cool, like whether it's anthropology or whatever it is, and you might not necessarily have a daily or day-to-day application for it, but it's like that's the time you take the classes, that's the time you learn the cool stuff. And you always have time later for hobbies and like exploring things and taking, you know, getting second, third, whatever master's degrees and whatever you're interested in. So I will give the microphone back to the younger people who have more like appropriate advice.
So for, I mean, I went to Rutgers just like Safa, I think you said you went there too. So there, like you kind of start out with like the 101, 102 classes, and then from there they kind of guide you. Like the classes go from like the 200, 300 people to like 30, and then it gets smaller and smaller. I remember in my senior year, I had like a couple of journalism classes, and there was like literally like less than 10 people like sitting around a table, which was great because it really got you an opportunity to speak with your professor. And for me, I think all of my professors were like just like old old white men that were journalists, but they were very like not like the stereotypical type of people that they tell you to run from. They were very willing to help you out. And for me, I think like more so than like the exact classes, because I also kind of took like more of like a print route. I didn't really take any kind of broadcast classes, which I wish Rutgers required you to do that a little bit, just so you kind of got to see both. So if it hasn't changed now and you can kind of just make it your own journey, I would suggest try out like a bunch of different types just to see, and just so that you have that experience, because if you're more well-rounded, it's only going to be better for you. But like aside from that, I think really take advantage of talking to the professors after class, coming early, raising your hand during class to ask the questions, regardless of whatever class it is. So I also, like Reem, I also did a double major, so I was also doing religion, and it same kind of concept, like how are you going to apply that like day to day? And it was like what you said, I just took some, like, because journalism at Rutgers was not credit intensive, so I had like more classes to take to be a full-time student, and then I just took the ones that I thought were interesting, and I was like, oh look, if I take 3 more classes I can double major in this, so why not? That's kind of what I did. But yeah, I totally like agree with what Reem said, like that's your time. Like even if you don't know, like yeah, do the courses that are going to like help you towards getting the credit for your major, of course. And then if you have like an extra class that you can take on the side, just take whatever is interesting, because you're never going to have that chance again.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. I think some of the classes that had the biggest impact on my career and just like how I think about the world were like the random elective classes that I took that were like the the culture of bioethics in Japan, like totally random, but like amazing and like really thought-provoking. Yeah, you really don't get to do that after college, which I really miss. So like lean into that. I think also because I really think that in journalism, the most important skill that a person can have is like the ability to pitch ideas. Like who you become as a journalist is so much a function of how good you are at thinking about and pitching ideas. And how you get ideas is by being a well-rounded person. I mean, I think a lot of the mechanics of how to be a journalist, like how to interview, you know, in podcasting, how to edit audio, like all of those things are things that you learn by doing internships. Like it's great to take college classes on those things. It helps you get a head start, but a lot of that stuff you really can't understand the day-to-day mechanics of until you actually do it. So I think in college it's a much better investment to like take classes that actually broaden your perspective so that you can then use that perspective to generate ideas. And I think that I hire interns now, and I like look at tons of resumes. I genuinely do not care where they went to college. I don't even really look at GPAs. Like, the thing I care about a lot more is like reading their cover letter, reading the story that they're telling about themselves, reading what kinds of pitches they have, what kinds of thoughts they have, what are they interested in. And yeah, and what, like internship experience do they have? So that's all way more important than, what even their major was. Like, honestly, that doesn't actually go as far as I think people think it might. That being said, I think Habiba's point, Reem's point about like, talking to professors, I think that was really instrumental to me. Like, I was really unsure that I could make a career out of it and out of being a journalist. And I think like it was like one of my college professors that I sat down with in the spring of my senior year who was like, no, I think you can do this. Like, I think you might be okay at this. And I was like, okay, good. Like, and he was like, let me just introduce you to so-and-so that I know who like, works at New York Public Radio. And like that connection ended up just being helpful in like knowing where to apply. And I think one thing has really led to another in that way. So yeah, I think embracing college as like an exploratory time is really important.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, an exploratory time. And I think Habib already touched on kind of like the way Rutgers was framed, where you start off with the more general classes that are like 300 people. I can't tell you what I learned in intro, like macroeconomics. I can't, but I can tell you like the books that we read my senior year of college and that one random storytelling class that I took, because it was so interesting to me and I had the time to take it. And it was like, my last year and I was really trying to enjoy and make the most out of it. And so I think in the beginning, you do need to tough it out and kind of take those like more difficult, annoying classes just to set your foot in the door in college and whatever major you've chosen in the beginning stage, whatever school you're part of, but really take advantage of all the opportunities that you have in your university, especially now. I know of like Rutgers was offering like a course about Beyonce and like the impact that she's had on like the culture and fabric of the United States. And so there's literally a niche for everything. And I think the only time you're really going to be able to learn those things in such an open space is going to be college. And I think that pretty much covers the question. Everyone else already gave such great answers.
Yeah, absolutely second those points a million and one times. It's truly that. I mean, as a current college student, it's just trying to fit in those classes, like those extra classes that you may not necessarily need to take. Like, obviously could fulfill like general academic requirements, things of that sort, but still open up your horizons. And they may or may not necessarily be directly tied to what you're studying, but you find time to add them in. They somehow just bring up light into your world. And I see that from the perspective of having taken like Bio 1, Bio 2, Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, Orgo 1, Orgo 2, Physics 1, Physics 2, and not just in the field of being a pre-med student, things of that sort, but just in any field where there are those core courses. And there are core courses for every major regardless, but especially when you get into the scheme of all these core courses and it doesn't, it makes you basically, what's the terminology? What's the phrase? The blinders. So the horse blinders that came out of nowhere. But the idea of taking elective courses or courses that are just like very interesting. You read the title of the course and you're like, wow, that's like, I could spend hours just thinking about this title, let alone the class itself. Like the types of classes where you walk out of the classroom, you're like, I literally could have stayed in the classroom for a few more hours. The types of professors that you can have conversations with, like forever and ever and ever about a billion and one topics. And the professor serves as your like mentor, but also as your friend, because you're both geeked out about the same exact piece of knowledge, which is amazing. So yes, I second those comments. And time flies, which is a big sad, but I feel like we all look back to, I mean, everybody in general looks back to college and those experiences because they're very special and they fly by very quickly, and it's partly what makes them very precious. But yeah, thank you guys for sharing those experiences. But this produces a great segue for thinking about just thinking out of the box in terms of your experiences outside of the classroom specifically, in the lens of internships or externships or shadowing opportunities that you guys may have taken on during your college experience. Talk to us a little bit about those experiences. What types of internships have you preferred over others? How have you sought out those opportunities? Maybe what types of forums you've applied to those internships on?
I can go first. Internships is like, for journalism at least, is hands down the best way to learn. Like the academic part of it is a very, like, it could be condensed down to like a very quick thing, but like the internships is really where you figure out if this is the field that you want to pursue, and B, if like how to do the things like day by day, like what Sarah was saying, like editing and like those kinds of skills, like you will pick them up on the job, like within like a few days to weeks. And so I think internships is like is where your entire focus should be. I wouldn't stress about what school I went to. I would stress about what kinds of internships I got. And I would definitely, if you are still like in the beginning phase of like exploring, I would definitely try to get as many internships in different parts of journalism. So I would try like broadcast and then radio and then print and online. Now I'm sure there's social media internships. So like all of that, I would try to explore. I got lucky and I was able to do a lot of internships throughout high school, college, and then even in grad school. I went to Michigan and I was at Michigan Radio for a whole summer and I absolutely loved it. And you're going to have some tough times in internships and you're going to have some good times. So you're going to have times where people are yelling at you and stressing you out. And that's just the nature of the field too, which is something that you should have experience with so that you know if that's actually something you want to do. But like learning about something in school and then actually doing it with other people on a team is such a vastly different experience. And it's really, I think, like it's the way to grow up. Like you will never grow up by going to school or reading or taking a class. Like you'll learn, but you won't mature. But in order to mature and grow into the person that you want to be, you have to go through those tough situations in which you're dealing with other people in the workplace or wherever it is, or like trying to track down people to literally talk to in person, like on the streets of New York City. And that all those tough situations come from internships. And so I say, like, try to get the internships that you want in any way possible. So like I've done a fair share of just like emailing professors and saying like, hey, I'm thinking like this is kind of where I want to be over the summer. What do you think? And people surprisingly are a lot more helpful than you think they'll be. Like you're always sending out that email or calling somebody and you're like, oh God, they're going to think I'm annoying and this and that, but they're really not, because they are in that position because somebody else helped them. So believe you me, like the entire field is based off of trying to help other people, because everybody gets somewhere by being helped and everybody knows that. So like I would say email your professors, make good relationships with them so you can get those internships. When you're at those internships, if it's somewhere that you decide like this feels good, I would love to be here, I like the energy, I like the vibe, then I would say like go all out, like spend as much time as you can there, push yourself as much as you can, like raise your hand as much as you can. It might seem stressful and you might have like other coursework that you're working on, but it is an investment that's 100% worth it to make a good impression and like really show them that you're serious. You could do this job by yourself if you have to later down the road. And with this job market, like I think that is a huge plus for you, because kind of like these companies are, at least for CNBC, like managers are preferring to hire from interns and news associates, people who are already been in the company, they've been trained. It's just so much easier to hire them to kind of like look through a pool of like thousands of applicants and try to find somebody. So I would say internships is like your best bet. Apply online for them, email your professors, talk to people like me, like whoever you can. If you have any kind of contact in the field, that's really where you should be focusing on.
Yeah, definitely. for me, I did a couple of internships, which were mostly virtual in when I was in college. And it was like, I remember one time I just bumped into like this girl that I had gone to Sunday school with like before my NUI days, and it had been like maybe 10 plus years since I had seen her. And she's like asking me as a freshman, like, oh, what do you want to do? And so I mentioned to her, like, oh, this seems a little interesting. And she connected me with somebody that was running a blog at the time. Which now everybody has a blog, but back then it was also 2011, I think, or 2010. And not many people were in that space, or not many people knew about that space. So I kind of I did an internship with her for, unfortunately at that time it was like, I don't even know if it counted for anything besides just experience. It definitely was unpaid, all of those things. But now I don't know what the game looks like now. I hope they're paying interns, or by the time I got to my senior year, when I did a different internship, and this was for a basketball magazine that I got credit for. So I think I got like 6 credits in one semester for that. So my schedule was like super open because I was just doing that. In terms of classes, it was very open. And I remember for that, it was like Reem said, like she had just kind of emailed her professors asking, like, do you know of anything? I had a specific class which was called Mass Media Management, and it was an extremely helpful class that I took at college. And they basically taught you how to manage a newsroom. Even though I never really saw myself ever kind of like moving up the ladder that much in a role where I would become a manager of a newsroom, it was just very interesting to see like how the communication dynamics work from my professor. And so he had us write a letter to like wherever we wanted to kind of just like pitch ourselves. So I remember I was like really into basketball at that time, and I emailed, or I wrote a letter for my assignment for class to the editor-in-chief of this basketball magazine. My professor, and before that I had already written in letters to the editor excuse me, for that particular magazine, and they had published a couple of my letters. So I ended up writing that like paragraph way down in my in my letter, and my professor is like, he like circled that in a red pen, and he put an arrow way at the top of my page, and he's like, this is what you need to say first, like, you know me already. And I made those edits and I sent it out to him, and like the editor-in-chief, like he emailed me back. They like followed me on Twitter. I was like super excited. I was like, oh my God, like they responded to me, they know who I am. And it was such a great feeling. And it was just a matter of like making sure that you kind of do your research, like even before you get to the place that you want to be. Don't go in there not knowing anything, because it kind of just makes you look a little foolish. So for me, like, they recognized that I was an avid fan of that magazine. I had read up on them. I knew who their writers were. I like followed their writers, like, I knew their names, and then they eventually knew my name, which was like super cool. And it definitely helped, because then like that, like I didn't really have to apply to anything. I just sent that email, and it was like, if there's anything that pops up, hey, let me know. And he did. He emailed me back. He called me into like tour the office, and got me something going. So it was like Reem said, there, you'd be surprised how many people are willing, or how willing people are to help you out. Like, even if they seem like they're really up there or really established, they don't really forget that someone helped them get to where they are too.
Yeah, totally. I think, one thing I was going to add is, when you're applying to an internship, I think keeping in mind, like, definitely getting recommendations from people, who are in the field, or your professors, whoever, and keeping an eye out for programs or like news outlets or media companies that have a precedent for hiring interns. Because I definitely think like going to a place that has a structured program for interns is like overall a much better and like productive and less stressful experience than like going to a place that's like, sure, we'll take an intern, we've never had one, but I'm sure you'll find something to do. Like, I did a couple of those kinds of internships in college, and it's kind of spent the summer like floundering and not really knowing what to do with myself, and neither did my boss. And so I think my first it's, you know, it's funny because I've only really had one internship in media, but it ended up turning into a job and then another job and another job. And it's just what I've been doing since. And, you know, it was at New York Public Radio for this show called The Brian Lehrer Show. I'd applied to it. I'd applied to New York Public Radio because one of my friends had applied the year before. Like, that's literally the reason why I picked it. And also because I listened to, you know, I grew up having WNYC on in the car and you know, had heard the Brian Lehrer Show and was listening to a bunch of their podcasts. So I, like, similar to Habiba, it was like a news outlet that I was like familiar with. And I applied, and, you know, on I think every media internship application, like, you're going to be asked like to pitch an idea or two. And I think I had, like, because I had familiarity with the kinds of things that the Brian Lehrer Show was doing, I think that really helped me on my application. And just like generally being a good writer, I think, and just like conveying a sense of myself on the cover letter probably helped me a lot. It's funny because it wasn't even the kind of internship where I was like doing the media. Like, it was like my job was to make sure that the guests who were scheduled to come into the station that day for the show were coming in on time. Like, and then when the show was on air, to like screen all of the people that call into the show and to be like, hi, like, what's your name and where are you calling from? So that when they finally end up on the air, they're like, I'm Bob from like Red Bank, New Jersey. Like, you know, it wasn't even like I was really producing things yet. But the thing that really was helpful in that internship was, you know, my manager saw that I really cared about what I was doing and was kind of like, hey, like, what's your plan after this? And I was like, I graduated college. Like, I want to be here. If you hear about any opportunities, like, let me know. And sure enough, like, she was in touch with the hiring manager at another show called On the Media. And they were like, oh, we actually have an opening for a per diem, which is basically like a contract job. And, you know, literally just walking around the office one day, ended up sort of talking to her, and she was like, oh yeah, like, you know, your manager mentioned you and was like, we actually have an opening, like, do you want to come just like work at the show for a week and like see how it goes? And I have no experience audio editing, producing, nothing at this point. And I'm like, okay, sure. And like learned everything literally that first week. And I think you know, there was enough there from just like our interactions and like her watching me do that job that she was like, all right, cool, like, come back next week. And then it just turned into like several months of working there. And, you know, I just learned so much week after week, like churning out segments and just doing the work of producing, as Reem said. Like, it's just invaluable and so much more than any class could really teach you. And then literally working late one night at that job, I bumped into another person who was the executive producer at another show called More Perfect. And we just literally struck up a conversation, and I was like, hey, like, let me know if you need help sometime. And she was like, oh, actually, like, we're making the second season of our show, and like, we need a producer. Like, do you want to try coming to work for us? And I was like, absolutely, like, I'm a big fan of your show. So that's how that job happened. And I think like it's a bit harder to do that, like, organic bumping into people and like making conversation and asking them for work nowadays that everybody's online. But I still tell all the interns that I work with that, like, you know, we, like, at our company, we have Slack. Like, you can literally Slack anybody in the company and be like, hi, like, can I get your advice? And I think the thing that's the most productive is when you go in with like a really specific ask, like Reem said, like, you know, hey, I'm trying to figure out where to intern this summer, or hey, I want to hear about what it's like to produce a segment of On the Media or like Radiolab or whatever, you know, rather than just being like, hey, can I pick your brain? Because like when I get a pick your brain email, I genuinely don't know what to say. So anyway, I think that once you get an internship, like, it's massively, massively important to like just have conversations with people, like, you know, just, yeah, like just so people know your face and your name, and they know that you're like at least a smart person who asks good questions. Like that in and of itself does so much in helping you, go to the next step.
Yeah, I think if there's one main thing that you really, really learn in college, or that you should learn in college, is how to pitch yourself. Because to be completely honest, it can be difficult to find an internship. There's thousands of people who are applying to the same internship as you, and they want to know, why should I pick you of all people out of the hundreds of people that have applied? And so you really need to be able to market yourself to that company, to that hiring manager, as to why you should be chosen for it. I remember in my junior year of college, I got an internship opportunity from Discovery Communications, the parent company for like Food Network, Discovery Channel, etc. And after all the interviews, the hiring manager said, well, we can't take you actually because you can only work 2 days a week. And I immediately like snapped into marketing mode. And I was like, actually, like I could do 2 days, full days, and I'll come in for a half day. And then if you need me, like I'll be available, blah, blah, blah. And you really have to put yourself out there and tell them, like, even if like the timing isn't working, listen, this is my background. This is what I'm interested in. Like, I can promise you, I'll be able to do as much as you need me to do, etc. And if there's one thing that media companies love, is seeing that you have on your resume another media company, because that immediate is like, oh, she worked at like Discovery, like now we need to grab her. And so it really just takes that like one opportunity for you to like get your foot in the door, get that name on your resume. And I really think that can open so many doors for you. So you should really, really work hard and strategically to secure an internship. And just a piece of advice that I like giving people who, are in college and are looking for internships, especially in the media space. We are so close to, at least if we're based in Jersey, we're so close to one of the biggest media hubs of the world, which is New York. And so you can always try to get internships in the spring and fall, because those are so much more attainable than the ones in the summer. Because in the summer, you have people applying from all over the world who are coming in and are going to stay for that entire season and work there. And so if you can just get your foot in the door and make it work and say like, one day my Fridays are off, like I'll go into the city and I'll intern. That's a huge, huge opportunity. And like that we have, specifically being from the tri-state area. And so, yeah, really pitch yourself, learn how to market yourself, get your elevator pitch. I know that's like all they taught us in business school. Like you were practicing your 30-second elevator pitch constantly. Get that really tightened up, really write out a really brilliant resume, showcase yourself, and inshallah, things should open up for you.
Yeah, the point about like living so close to New York is like such a big one. Like, I mean, that's the only reason, like my internship that I was talking about was unpaid. It was 2 days a week. Thank God, like New York Public Radio and a lot of other media companies like do pay interns now. But even then, like, I don't know, like certainly not enough to like live off of, and literally I was getting like a $12 a day stipend that didn't even cover the bus fare one way. But just the fact that like my parents lived in central Jersey and I was able to commute just put me at such an advantage that I was even able to take that job. So yeah, it's no small deal that we all go to school and like live so close to New York.
I think that's an excellent point. And we were just having this conversation in our last meeting. Like we were talking about how lucky we've been to have like such good interns over the past year at CNBC in our department specifically. And we were just talking about like, we've had people from California and like everybody was virtual, obviously. So we had people from all over the country, and it just like opened the door for so many cool people to apply for something they couldn't apply for before, because like, $12 a day, for example, is just like, it's hard. So I don't like, for those listening, I don't know what the landscape is going to look like going forward now that people are going back to the office and stuff, but I do have some kind of like inclination that this virtual thing is going to stay around for a while, just because it opens the door to so many people and like allows them to do things that they could never do before. So keep that in mind too. Like it might actually, when you're looking for internships, you might be super stressed out and it's so daunting. You're like, where do I start? Where do I end? Like, who's going to take me? I'm just, some random person in central Jersey. No, like you probably have a lot more options now. You can apply to virtual internships at places that are like across the country that you'd have never even thought of before. So that is another plus for you, definitely in this time. And Sara, I just want to mention, I was at the Brian Lehrer show too.
Dude, I just figured that out because I was looking at your LinkedIn. It's amazing. What a
I
small
like,
world.
because all of this stuff was so long ago that I was thinking about it. And then when you said Brian Larish, I was like, yes, I did intern there. I interned there in like 2011, 2012.
What?
I was supposed to do some per diem for them too, but it just didn't work out because I was traveling. But yeah, I know, small world, dude. I feel like that show is the gateway to WNYC.
No, it's true. That's absolutely true. Oh my God, we're gonna have a whole nother conversation about this.
Right,
offline.
exactly.
Yeah, you guys, thank you so much for your points. Yeah, I can't second that enough. And in terms of, I guess, like the commonality between all these pieces of advice is literally just networking. Like, you'd be so surprised. Like, it's not necessarily something concrete. It's physically bumping into somebody, you know, like in physicality somewhere, or also just via the internet, social media, anything of that sort. Just meeting somebody who's doing currently or previously did an internship that you want to pursue, or is currently pursuing a career that you like are really interested in. Just, I think the biggest barrier is just overcoming that hump of being like, oh my God, do they really want to hear me? But there is that element of people help them when they were exactly in your position. So and of course, you assume the best in people because we would want to help you and wouldn't ghost you. But literally, yeah, I can't emphasize the networking point enough. Like, to all our viewers at whatever stage of life you're in right now, please make a LinkedIn account. I cannot emphasize that enough. Make one right now. Actually, make one right now after this panel. But that's your homework, because maybe I'm just like a huge LinkedIn geek, but LinkedIn's literally amazing. Like, the fact that you can search people by career, by post, by job, by location, and really narrow down your options to really explore what people are pursuing currently in their careers, what they've pursued in the past, their education, where they're practicing, and then just reach out to them. It's literally that simple. But the hardest part is just searching, because there's so many people to choose from, and so many people that are in one forum. But it's not just LinkedIn. There are so many forums out there, and the media world online is most definitely growing. I do agree with your point, Neem. I don't think it's going anywhere. The idea of like virtual internships, I wouldn't necessarily say that they would be dropped just because we're, like, I guess, easing off the COVID pandemic era, inshallah. But still, they provide everybody with a huge opportunity to pursue opportunities they would have, or experiences they would have otherwise never sought out. So yes, I second that. And yeah, I guess to end off, we would really appreciate to just hear a little bit about what you enjoy most about your current job, your current freelance career. And if you had to give one piece of advice to your NUI high school self, what would it be?
Okay, so I don't know if I mentioned this, but when I went back to CNBC last year, I entered as a news associate in a digital rotation program. And so I was supposed to rotate through different departments and then like decide kind of where I wanted to end up. And my first rotation was social media. And I remember getting that assignment and being super bummed out. Like, what does that have to do with news? Like, I know like people get their news from social media, but like from a production standpoint, like how interesting can that be? And I was like, I'm not a cool social media person. Like, how am I going to be able to do this and stuff? But I ended up falling in love with it. And it really is like the best intersection of like news and where like the field is going. And it was just a lot of taking a news story and trying to condense it down and make it interesting enough for people to want to click on the story, but not giving away too much information. It's actually really hard to write concisely. Like it, you know, like our reporters have endless space when they're writing stories for .com, but for us, we have a line and we have like a character limit, and we have to kind of like get the story spirit there without giving away too much. And it was a challenge that I enjoyed. And so I ended up loving it. And I somebody left when I was almost at the end of my rotation. And I was like, I raised my hand. I was like, you know, can I stay on the team? Like, I really, really enjoyed this. I wasn't expecting it. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, you're trained, you know what you're doing. You should stay with us. And so that's how that happened. And I love social media now. It's so weird because I'm like, I never thought I would be doing this, but that's kind of the cool thing about journalism, is that the field is always changing and there's always new roles and positions that are coming up and you're always learning new things. So I love that part of it, like the ever changing part of it. I love. I think my biggest piece of advice to myself would be like, just have confidence in yourself and what you can do and where you come from. like, I feel like in high school, the biggest barrier the biggest challenge that you face is just like not thinking that you can do something, not thinking that you're good enough to do something, not even thinking you're good enough to raise your hand because you're just like, I don't need to be here, I shouldn't be here, whatever. It's just part of like growing up and being young. Like you're just always like doubting yourself and questioning every single move you make all the time. And I think like I would just take myself and be like, Reem, like you can do this. You studied just like everybody else. You can read and write just like everybody else. Like you have literally nothing in your background can hold you back. You have the same education as everybody else who's applying to this job. Like just apply, do and put yourself out there and know that you are, if anything, you're just like everybody else. Like you're not less than anybody in any way in any other applicant. And so I think once you have that, once you're able to convince yourself of that as a young person, you will go so far because like the older you get, the more kind of like self-confidence you gain based on experience and just age. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to put myself out there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you don't really care. But when you're young, that's really difficult to accomplish. If you can try to like ingrain it in your mind that you can do whatever you need to do because you are prepared to do so, then I think that will really, really open up a lot of doors to you. I feel like when I was younger, I was like, I'm just going to apply to these things because like, I think I fit the profile of who they need. And don't do that. Please don't do that. Like just whatever you want to do, please try to do it. And like, inshallah, you will get to where you need to go. It might be like a very convoluted route in getting there. You might do like Sarah was saying, like these random internships or these random things. And like, it might just come down to like bumping into somebody in the elevator and like just chatting about, you know, what happened last night at the Oscars or something. And then boom, like it evolves into something else. So I think that for me and like for my daughter is really what I want to focus on, especially like this whole generation of Muslims. I just want us to be like confident in ourselves and what we can do and what we can achieve. And I think that will really push us forward as like an entire Muslim American generation. That's really what we need.
That's awesome. I think, yeah, I think the confidence piece of that is so important. Like, I think Reem, similar to you, like, I don't know, I got to college and I was like, I went to school in a trailer. Like, what am I doing here? You know, I think, I mean, luckily Northern Mountain students don't have that problem now. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely an imposter syndrome that comes with not just, you know, being from a small school, but also like being Muslim and being from a group that's completely underrepresented in media and being a woman in my case, you know, I mean, it's just like there's so many things that can really shake your sense of like, do I belong here? And I think the only thing that's really helped me with that is that like reminding myself that everybody to some degree has imposter syndrome, and also that like meritocracy is fake. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, sure, there are a million people who also deserve to have my job. That's just true. Like there's nothing I can do about that. But, you know, for whatever reason, you know, God and the universe have like chosen to put me here. So like, let me just make the best of it that I can and not waste too much time trying to convince myself that I deserve to have this opportunity. I think I'll say a little bit about what I actually do. So I work on a show where I can kind of pitch ideas about anything. We do a lot of like long form audio storytelling. So I spend a lot of my time looking for ideas about things to tell stories about, like, for example, you know, a Supreme Court case from history that nobody really knows about, but that is actually really interesting and affects all of our lives. So that's like a story that I would love to do. And so then I, you know, end up pitching it to my colleagues. If it gets greenlit, I do a lot of reporting and a lot of research, like try to find people to interview, end up interviewing those people. Then because I also do the production side of it, I will like edit that audio, you know, try to make all the voices like flow together. I also do some music production that I've like learned along the way. So I'll like add some sound design and things like that. And I think for me, I really enjoy having a job where I get to kind of dabble in all of those things and have a finished product where like I touched every part of that, you know. Being a producer at, you know, across my industry like looks very, very different. In some places you're doing one piece of the job. In other places, you're doing another piece. In some places, like where I am, you're doing kind of a little bit of everything. So I would say, I think the parts that I enjoy most are definitely the interviewing, and unexpectedly, I really do love audio production. Like, it's the same part of my brain that, like, when Miss Maria in high school Spanish class was like, make a video and use like Windows Movie Maker to like edit the video. Like, the part of my brain that like loved that without even realizing, like, loved that kind of assignment is the same part of my brain that is like loves doing audio production. And like, I use a software called Pro Tools and I really enjoy using it. And advice that I would give myself, I think, like I said earlier, like, pay close attention to the things that make you feel alive. Like, I don't even know if happy is the right word, because I don't think I could have coded it as happiness at the time, but yeah, just like things that make you feel like, it's like what Noor was saying, like, classes where you feel like you, after the lecture was over, you could easily sit in the classroom for like 2 more hours, or like conversations that you could just keep having. A lot of these things happen even in just conversations with friends and family, or like books that you read. It's not even all in school or even in internships. So it's just like, over time, like, if you sort of keep an eye on all the things that you've bumped into that make you feel that way. I love lists. I would even keep a list if I could give myself advice. Just keep a list. Like, you don't need to know it, like, all the items on the list can feel super random, but eventually they help you figure out like a larger picture.
So I'd say I have a pretty non-traditional path to my role now, and I imagine that I will continue to have a very non-traditional career in terms of like the next steps that I take and the places that I go. And so maybe just a little bit of background. So in college, like I said, I did marketing and journalism. So most of the internships that I did were on the corporate side of media companies. So I worked at Discovery, but I did digital marketing and like app development. I'm not a tech person, but I assisted with like the content creation for apps. And then I went to NBC, where I did content distribution, which is how all of your content that you watch at NBC owned programming ends up on the screen in front of you, whether that's through like Verizon Fios or on Netflix or on Peacock, etc. And then I went to Accenture, which is like this consulting firm where I did like AI and customer experience design, etc. But now I'm at the World Economic Forum, where I sit within our tech policy team, specifically focused on artificial intelligence. And I get to pitch out to incredible journalists like Reem and Sarah about the work that we're doing and why it's important to showcase the work that we're doing. I also write content for the World Economic Forum about a wide array of different things, mostly focused within the tech space and like the intersectionality of like tech and minorities and, things like that. And so it's really, really interesting work. And I think that's something that I would tell the younger Safa, that there are so many spaces where media is involved. It doesn't always have to be like this really clear-cut path. And so you can get involved, like I said, within the corporate side. You can get involved with the people who are helping make the content and the stories for larger outlets to cover for you. And so it's always, I think, a learning experience within this career. Journalists themselves, we're always growing, we're always learning. There's new stories to cover constantly every single day. And so it's, I think, really all about learning. And if there's a specific space within journalism you're interested in, like right now for me, it happens to be tech. I don't know if it'll always be tech, but continue to learn more about that space. Like, I'm really focused on artificial intelligence right now. I don't know why, but I am, and I'm continuing to learn about it. And I think that's like what Sarah was saying, like she loves that, like creating those podcasts, because she loves like that oratory side of it. And so it was like a really long-winded way to say that you're going to continue to learn. You are learning as a really young student. And I think throughout your career, even if it's not traditional, if you're going to go, study this and have this exact career for the rest of your life, you're going to continue to grow in whatever space you decide to be a part of.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for all your insight. So wholesome, very, very wholesome. And yeah, that's, I think, all of your piece of advice alludes to the idea of being a confident Muslim American in this country. To every person who's watching this and every person who's to watch this afterwards, you have just as much of a fair chance to pursue any opportunity in this country as anybody else beside you. It doesn't matter if there are, I mean, I have to remind myself of this as well, but if there are 500 applicants to one single spot, that's not to say that you're not deserving of the spot. And if any opportunity comes and sits at your lap, it's not to say that it wasn't meant for you, because everything that came your way was meant for you, and everything that missed you was also meant for you as well. So yeah, I definitely second those points. Very, very fruitful pieces of advice to all our viewers and to everybody who's going to watch this afterwards at your own time. Please do take those points into consideration. And certainly things that I have to remind myself as well. We get so, I mean, because life is life, we get so bogged into trying to fit certain categories and taxidermies and boxes and trying to pursue careers. But at the end of the day, life's about pursuing your passions. So to find somebody that can pay you to pursue your passion, I think it's the epitome of any story, not just, one's career in media communications or journalism. So thank you guys so much for all your insight today, for answering all the questions. I hope that to all the viewers, you've benefited from this conversation. And please feel free to reach out to the NUI Alumni Association for all the panelists' contact information as well. We look forward to hosting future career panels in the future. But please, this should serve as a reminder that the NUI Alumni Association, is a cohort of students. I mean, even beyond association, a cohort of Muslim Americans that are ready to give you a hand into any career that you're interested in. And we understand you, and we're here to help you in any way, shape, or form. So please feel free to reach out. If you're an alum and you're not involved with the NUI Alumni Association, you'd like to, please also do reach out. Update yourselves with the reminder emails for upcoming events, announcements, and things of that sort. I wish you guys Ramadan Mubarak. It's coming right around the corner. And yeah, I hope you guys have a blessed Ramadan. You get to spend it in the most spiritual manner that you can. Hopefully you get to detox a little bit from life's craziness and spend some quality family time and with the community and things of that sort. And thank you guys so much for answering all the questions I had for you guys today and sharing your experiences. I certainly enjoyed it so very much. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, smash that like button down below. The YouTube enemy is coming out. But yeah, we're here to help you. Thank you guys so much. Jazakumullah khairan. And